Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sam and John's Book Club. In the interest of time, it's just going to be Sam this week because tragedy has struck. I have had quite a backlog of episodes that we have recorded and I have not yet uploaded. As a matter of fact, that backlog currently stands at 5 unuploaded episodes, starting with Chapter 75 of Oathbringer and going through the end of Oathbringer, all recorded and just now beginning to be edited. And in editing them, I have realized that somewhere between our episode prior to Chapter 75 and our episode including Chapter 75, John's audio stopped recording altogether. He is completely silent in all 5 of these episodes. We're not going to re-record them. I'm just going to quickly kind of go through and cram the entire end of the book, starting with the end of Part 3 and going through the end of Part 5, into one video here. So, sorry, trust me, very sorry. Clearly wish this hadn't happened, but here we are. I'm going to try to give you an idea of what John and I were talking about. And here we go. All right. So, Chapter 75, at this point, Caledon and the crew are all back in Kholinar. This is, Shallan, Adolin, Caledon, Elhokar, etc. And Dawnshard is going off and doing his diplomatic missions and whatnot. We're still getting his flashbacks. Right now, we are in one of Dawnshard's flashbacks. He is heading back to the Rift. He gets led into a trap pretty easily. The current High Lord of the Rift, who was a kid at Dawnshard's birth a long time ago, convinces him to head off and chase after Sadeas's forces, who had betrayed Dawnshard. He goes headlong right into this trap, totally driven by the thrill. And John and I were commenting on how that was kind of weird, right? Because this guy is like a legend of war, right? How does he just get lured into a ravine where people are going to drop rocks on him so easily? But yeah, he totally does because he's driven by just anger. He gets led right into the trap. He miraculously survives. He heads back. Sadeas is there now. They thought he had died. And Sadeas is trying to push him like the devil on his shoulder, hey, we have to not just retaliate, but teach these guys a lesson they won't forget, right? And Evie is like, no, don't totally slaughter them. Dalinar has this cool line where he says that, we will raise this land, no one will live here for 10 generations. Their families will not cry for them, for none will remain to weep, was the specific quote I pulled down. It was cool, but also dark. So Dalinar is about to do something bad, and he does in the very next chapter. He, dumps a ton of burning oil down into the rift and just absolutely slaughters everybody in there, tens of thousands of innocent people. And it turns out that his wife is among them. She had fled there the previous night without him knowing, to try to negotiate some sort of surrender. They had actually sent out people with white flags who Dalinar had shot because he was so angry. So they probably even tried to tell him that his wife was in there, but he just would not hear it. So he burned them all alive. He watched, Sadeas was there hey, great job. Dalinar was, and yeah, we remember back, Kadash was do not remind me of our days. Kadash being, the one of the head Ardens in Dalinar's employ, is, he was saying, do not remind me of the days we spent in the army together. You don't want me to remember you in that light. And I guess that light had specifically been the light of the fire of the rift shining up at Dalinar's face as he stared down at all the people he had just murdered. And, Dalinar had also reacted strongly when he was called an animal, right? And it's well, an animal indeed, right? Here we are. So that was the horrible, horrible thing in Dalinar's past that is the reason everybody, treats him with such fear. He wasn't just a powerful warlord. He was a total, a monster, pretty much. All right. So, back to Caledon and Shallan and all of them. There was some line that made it sound like some Unmade had been actually eliminated during Ahari Yetyam. It sounds like there are 2 Unmade currently in town. One of them is responsible for all of the opulence, the excess that people are living, in. And one of them is the one that's corrupting Spren around town. And those are 2 separate guys. Caledon is getting bantered at by Vale, and he just doesn't understand friendly banter. Vale is like totally hitting on him and just giving him a really hard time. And I swear, Vale is the reason for this love triangle, like through and through. They're in like a cafe or something, and there is an odd Kremling clinging to the side of the bench. It has a strange tan pattern on its back, and hey, maybe that's an ear or something. If you remember back to Edge Dancer, we of course had Arklow, who had said outright, he was the sleepless made all out of bugs. And he had said outright, like, yeah, he had sent, like little sensory organ Kremlings out to spy on significant people. And he'd actually named, like, the surgeon, the warlord, right, etc. So this could very well be one of Arklow's or maybe one of another sleepless. Vatha also picks up some, like, Lightweaver Squire stuff, and he's really excited about it, but Shallan is just like totally nonchalant, or I guess she's Vale at this point. So that's cool. It's not just Caledon who's getting like Squires who are kind of getting Windrunner powers through him. Shallan's retinue is having the same thing happen to them, which is cool. Shallan is talking about creating disguises for her disguises because like her immediate disguises, Vale and Radiant to her are basically real people. I wrote down the line, light orange eyes. Somebody has light orange eyes. Oh, that was Azure. That was Azure, I think, who has light orange eyes. She calls her Shardblade her. Maybe that's significant. People, normally don't refer to the Shardblades, at least of Deadspren, by gender, right? I note that Cal and Azure seem very similar, like personality-wise. Caledon is just asking her like a stream of just bad questions that really are not terribly useful, and he finally he's not even asking her questions. He's like implying stuff. He finally asks a question, but it's not useful at all. He asked her like why do you make everyone call you sir? And she's like, I don't. That's just a thing they do. Lol. She asks Caledon, did you come here chasing me? And, who knows what that means. There was a reverse shadow with white eyes that warned Shallan that the heart was a trap, and we're going to have to find out what that means later. Next chapter, okay. Caledon is like, hey guys, I'm an Iradian, do what I say. And everyone's like, oh, okay. And it's like, Caledon, you could have done that a week ago, buddy. Like, he's been, gallivanting with this wall crew for a while, and it's like, why keep all these secrets? These guys were, they were totally happy to cooperate once they understood the situation. All right, Shallan has been, of course, Robin Hooding, giving food to people, and in this chapter she learns that is actually not terribly helpful. By giving food to these street urchins, she was painting huge targets on their backs, and basically she ruined some people's lives, it turns out, whoopsie-daisy. And, she notes, and I noted in my notes here, that, like, every once in a while it really becomes clear that Shallan is just acting. Like, she isn't Vale. She doesn't actually have the street smarts she pretends to have, right? And somebody who had really grown up on the streets would have known that this wasn't a way to help these people, right? But Shallan is just faking it, and that really becomes clear here. Okay, so we go back to Azure. We learn that her blade can easily cut through stone. Also, they have a soulcaster or some sort of fabrial. I think it's a soulcaster. In like this room that they had coated with sheets of some metal, like probably aluminum or something, which Wit had actually brought and provided to them, just kind of mysteriously. Wit is, still chilling in Kholinar. Soulcasters also don't work through... Oh, I wrote soulcasters here, but I meant span reeds. Span reeds don't work through whatever this metal is as well. Also, the fact that Azure's blade cuts through stone makes us think that it's probably an honor blade, because that is something that, shard blades and honor blades do. Okay. Wit is, for some reason, able to modify Shallan's illusions. Wit and Shallan are, like, having a nice talk in this next chapter. They go back through that story of the girl who looked up, which Shallan had put on his little play for pattern back in Urithiru. There are some quotes I liked. Even without light, people still lived. That's what people do. And I was like, yeah, that's nice. The girl who looked up in this version of the story is Prometheus, the one who stole the light from the gods, or stole fire from the gods and brought it back to humanity. Caledon comes walking back up to the tailor shop where they're all based with, all of these wall people following him. He has like a small army of like 500 or 600 people who are all basically down to just do what he says. And as he approaches, I think it's Adolin who says, of course, he's probably their leader now or something. And I just liked that line because, I mean, that really is just how Caledon do. He goes off and he comes back with a small army, and that's just... And I feel kind of bad for Elhokar through this because his whole task, while Shallan's been off doing Robin Hood stuff and Caledon's been with the wall, has been like trying to talk to people and get men that they could kind of build up a force. And he's been getting like 10 men here, 20 men there by like talking to people and trying to like be diplomatic about it. And here Caledon just shows up with like 500 or 600 people, just no problem. Okay, they assault the castle. Bada bing, bada boom. We're coming up on the climax of part 3. Azure stabs somebody with her sword, and their eyes do not burn out. Instead, their skin around the stab wound turns an ashen gray. And if you have read Warbreaker, you may recognize the significance of this and maybe compare it to another sword. Elhokar was surrounded by like a dozen bodies in one part. He had killed all these people. And it just caught me off guard because like we haven't really seen Elhokar do any combat, but he is a shard bearer, right? So it makes sense that he'd be able to just take out a bunch of people, but it was kind of whack. Caledon is wielding Syl as a 12-foot spear, and it's like it's really kind of wacky how diverse your shard blades or Spren can like form into these shard weapons, right? It makes me wonder like could they? We've seen that they can change in the middle of combat, right? So could it even be like, your opponent blocks your blow, but then the tip of your sword grows around and stabs them from the other side or something like that. Like, who knows? Either way, Caledon is, like, doing his Sephiroth cosplay here with his ridiculously long weapon. The castle siege is going, like, really, like, a bit too well, and there's no way that it's going to keep going this well. Shallan is wielding Pattern as a blade. This is not Brightness Radiance doing it. It's actually Shallan, so that's cool. And it makes us think, like, maybe during her talk with Hoyt, he really, like, got her to forgive herself. Like maybe Hoyt kind of fixed Shallan a little bit, but no, that would be too easy. Hey, there's a statue with a missing face. This is the same hallway we saw in the prologue of book 1. They're just going through it again, and that was a fun little continuity thing. Void Spren are like just bullying this little kid. This is once they reach Elhokar's and his wife's, who I can never remember the name of, bed chambers. And Elhokar is like talking to her and confronting her, and his son is over in the corner, the very tiny little kid, just getting bullied by Void Spren. Caledon actually killed one of the Void Spren with the Syl blade, and Syl did not like doing that. Actually, I don't know if they were Void Spren or Corrupted Spren. I think they were probably Corrupted Spren. Elhokar's wife is saying, I continued your father's work. I found the secret. This is Gavilar she's talking about, of course. So yeah, she found this unmade, and was like told that it could give powers, right? And she thought that she was like making a radiant. I think she thought that she was like continuing the work of the Sons of Honor somehow. She's obviously corrupted by the unmade. Oh, he found one of the ancient Spren, but he could never figure out how to bond it, she says. Kind of implying that, well, now she has found that out. The queen is definitely straight up evil. She thinks that she has like made the unmade her servants, but John and I were really doubting that was what was going on. Probably a slightly different power dynamic. She says, I have taken the gemstone into me and have harnessed Yelignar's power. So yeah, she's like swallowed a gem or something, and she thinks she's gonna be Yelinar. All right, so the heart is a trap. We heard some shadow with white eyes say earlier. Shallan approaches it. She touches it, like kind of regardless of that warning, and it like just flees immediately. And I'm like, is she in some sort of fake scene in her head? Like, is she being tricked somehow? But it turns out no, this is reality. It did actually just fled. That was the heart of the rebel. It just got out of there. And that shadow appears again and says, my name is Ja-Anat, and I am not your enemy. And I'm thinking, is this the unmade that betrayed Odium? Because we heard a hint about that earlier, right? Where one of them was like maybe willing to switch sides. And she's having this conversation with Ja-Anat inside the Oath Gate. Okay, Saw is there. Saw is, of course, one of the Parshendi that Caledon helped out, and we know that if Saw is there, Moash should also be in the area. Okay. Jean during this conversation is saying that the Taker of Secrets, we were made and then unmade. It's all kind of weird. Kaladin starts totally breaking down. This is something that John and I theorized might happen, right? There is no us and them, because Kaladin got to know these Parshendi, and now they're killing his friends. Like, everyone is his friends. He can't differentiate the good guys versus the bad guys. He just sees people, and he doesn't want any of them to die, right? So he kind of has a breakdown in the middle of this battle. And we have a number of, like, named character deaths back to back. Like, some of the people he met in the Wall Guard are dying, who, like, we heard names of. Like, we didn't really have time to get attached to them, per se. And some of the Parshendi who he learned the names of, who I also personally never got that attached to, are dying as well. And yeah, it was just like a lot of deaths of, like, named characters, which we don't tend to get too many of, and it kind of felt Game of Thronesy a little bit. And then came the scene that really hit me, and this is one where I wish that we still had the recording from the episode, because I actually got, like, kind of emotional during it. I'm probably not going to get emotional again, recounting something that happened a month ago. But Elhokar is seen kneeling by Kaladin, and this is a scene that I would love to see drawn or animated if anybody has some artistic talent and would like to send something my way. But he's kneeling there. He's holding his son, like, cradling his son in one arm, and holding a picture Shallan had given him earlier of, you know, not the person that he is, but the person that he could be. And this is something she's done before. And he begins saying the words of the first oath, right? Life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. Before he can get it all out, Moash appears and walks right through all of the combat that's happening, straight up to Elhokar, and stabs him through the chest, and then stabs him through the eye, and puts his boot on him and yanks the thing out, and Elhokar is dead as a doornail. And he turns to Kaladin, and he gives him the Bridge 4 salute, and then he dips. So, there you go. Moash got the revenge that he has been looking for 3 books, and Elhokar, right, you know, halfway through his redemption arc, after being a total, just a bad character in book 1, right, and now he's finally starting to, like, really get his stuff together and have potential to be a great guy, right? He gets killed before he has a chance to get there. So that was, I really like the scene because it, like, made me emotional, right? And it's like, I liked the scene a lot, but I'm, you know, obviously Moash sucks, and I was excited to see Elhokar maybe, you know, have a bit of a redemption arc. And then the queen comes walking down the stairs with, like, this unmade in a crystal, which is, like, shining through her chest, and, like, smoke is coming off of her and all this crazy stuff. So they failed. I mean, our good guys failed. Kholinar has fallen to the bad guys. The Oath Gate is trapped. Ja-Anat is warning them, but they open it anyways. Ja-Anat says, "I will try not to kill you." And poof, that's the end of the chapter. Okay, so we're checking in with Dalinar. This is the first time we've seen him since he got all of his memories back. Remember, kids, don't commit war crimes. So now it's kind of looking like, based on how terrible these memories were, that maybe losing all of his memories was the boon. Which begs the question, what was the curse? You know, Dalinar has said that he knew what his boon and curse were, but it turns out that was a bold-faced lie, it's starting to look like. Dalinar has a line, it's just a single quote I have here, relief from this awful burden, right? It was like, yeah, maybe relief from the awful burden was the boon. Azish dignitaries have stopped by. Taravangian has a conversation with Dalinar where, like, his plan to lose to Odium kind of, like, comes out in the way he's talking, and I like that, how, you know, it's like subtle, but it's there. You can see his, like, overall mindset, kind of this, like, very utilitarian way of thinking, like, come out through his behaviors in other ways, right? Which is nice. And now Dalinar, in addition to just getting all of his memories back of killing his wife and thousands of innocent people, also thinks that his son and nephew are both dead. So he's just in a dark place. It's a bummer for him. And the Oathgate, it turns out, drops them in Shadesmar. It was trapped. Ja and Not, I guess, managed to, instead of having it kill them, just drop them all in Shadesmar instead. And in Shadesmar, the Spren are, like life-size, like they're greater Spren. So Syl and Pattern are both there as, like, people. There's one more Spren with, like, ashen brown features and scratched out eyes. Azure, her blade does not turn into a Spren, so that is at least one, possibility eliminated. Azure says, "Damnation, I hate this place," so she has definitely been there before. And with that, holy moly, I'm already 20 minutes in, and we only got through one bit of this, so this is actually maybe going to be like a 2-hour video. But hey, that's the end of part 3. I'm going to go ahead and just briefly touch on some of the epigraphs from this part. These were all from the Urithiru Gem Archive, which of course Renarin discovered. There were all those little gems that could pop out of like drawers in that room with the big pillar. And like a lot of this stuff isn't really like too terribly important. One of these ancient Knights Radiant, this is presumably shortly before the Recreants, that all of these gems were recorded, said that they were going to go chart the hidden undersea caverns of Eamia. Find my maps in Akina. I don't know where Akina is, but Eamia is, of course, that spooky, mysterious island. Where have we gotten past the interlude with Vaza yet? I think we have. That ship sailed towards Eamia, and then everyone on the ship was killed by that chef. This is where the Unmade come from. This is where the Axes, the Collector, and presumably other people like him come from. So there are apparently maps charting the hidden undersea caverns of Eamia somewhere. Also, this generation has had only one bondsmith, and some blame the divisions among us upon this fact. The true problem is far deeper. I believe that Honor himself is changing. Like, that was an interesting little quote. Make of that what you will. A coalition has been formed among Scholar Radiants. Our goal is to deny the enemy their supply of Void Light. This will prevent their continuing transformations and give us an edge in combat. So, Void Light is different from Stormlight. It is distinct, and it is the source of the enemy's power. Ba-Ado Mishram has somehow connected with the Parsh people as Odium once did. She provides Void Light and facilitates forms of power. Our strike team is going to imprison her. And I believe there had been some line earlier about how it sounded like some Spren or Unmade or something had been trapped, which had started denying the Parshendi their forms of power. So apparently, Ancient Radiance succeeded in this. Ba-Ado Mishram is presumably an Unmade. And that is how that goes. And I think that's just about everything important there. I'm not going to look into it in terribly great detail. Also, there was a little page of notes about the Unmade at the end. Or I just wanted to talk to John about the Unmade, I suppose, so I have some extra notes at the end here. There are a couple that we have named. Moalak was the one responsible for the death rattles. Rayshafir, Midnight Mother, she was the copycat murderer chased away by Shallan. Ashert Marn is the other name of the Heart of the Revel, who just ditched on out of there as soon as Shallan gave him any trouble. Ja-Anat is the one who maybe wants to help. Ja-Anat is also the one who corrupts Spren. And Yelignar is the one that the Queen trapped in a gem and swallowed. Okay. Moving on. Interludes for part 4. Venli. Venli has been made into some sort of prophet. She's in envoy form, which isn't like... Is it a form of power? It is a form of power. She's not like a fused or anything. So she still has the new rhythms and all that. She can speak and understand all languages, which is, similar to what Dawnshard just got the ability to do. So it really, there's a lot of parallels between what the bad guys and the good guys can do. Eastern Alethkar is entirely Voidbringer controlled. We learn more examples of Voidbringers taking after the way of the humans they served. In this land, they're like bowing, covering their safe hands, calling people brightness, right? And we just see a lot of that of like all of these Voidbringers, these Parshendi who have just been taken out of slave form, right? Are also just members of the nations they lived in. Also, the Spren that's following Eshonai pulses with the old rhythms. It's a Spren that's looked like a little comet. It was around Eshonai's body when she found it, Okay, we have another interlude. This is from the point of view of a character named Mem, who I love. This is Moraze's Launderer. She's in Vedenar. Why is Moraze in Vedenar instead of Urithiru? I don't know. I guess he gets around. There is... she has a trainee... A helper, the laundry woman does, and this laundry woman's helper destroys a painting of a herald that Moraze had hung up in one of his rooms, obviously terrifying the launderer. She had been hunting that painting. Maireys walks in and realizes that he had been using it as bait. He refers to her as Ancient One. He says that he can tell her where Taln is, Talenalat Elin, who we know is currently being held by Amaram. And she reacts to that name. She clearly recognizes it. This indicates strongly to me that she is a herald. And Maireys is just really cool. After all of these like huge bombs are dropping, like you'd imagine this would be very significant for him. He just kind of nonchalantly looks at his laundry and says, "Oh, excellent work. Tell the guy that you get a 3 fire mark raise, right, or bonus." And it was just funny. I like Maireys a lot. We go back to Venli. She's going to Kholinar. Okay. And then we go to a person named Scheller, and this is like some Hardasian dude, and I didn't really get a lot from this one that stuck with me, so we're just going to skip it. And then we go to Venli again. Venli has named the spren that was around Eshonai's body Timber. That is that spren's name now. We learn that the Everstorm comes around every 9 days. Venli gets a vision from Odium in which she feels like her skin is all being burned off by an incredibly hot sun, and visions from Odium just sound generally unpleasant. Okay, now we have another Dalinar flashback. This one was 8 years ago, so we are about 3 years after the disaster at the Rift, and 2 years before Gavilar's death. So, Gavilar has started using Dalinar as a thinly veiled threat, right? Gavilar didn't want to unleash the Black Form. Even he couldn't say what he'd do. So this is the way Gavilar has started like using Dalinar diplomatically as like, well, I don't want to have to send the Blackthorn over to that country to quell those rebellions, right? So I guess if you guys don't want, all your towns burned down or whatever. Dalinar, meanwhile, is just being driven like totally mad. He's become a complete alcoholic. He goes out to this like place where beggars hang out. I don't know, to like try to find a place to get some booze because he's like fresh out. People are keeping it from him in the palace. And there's this beggar named Ahu, who at first sounds totally insane, but then starts just naming off some of the unmade, like, by name, and it makes me think, is this guy a herald? Maybe. Alright, next chapter. There are our 2 enormous spren with spears. We're back in Shadesmar now with Caledon and Shallan and Adolin, and Azure, and their spren. Okay. And there are these 2 enormous spren with spears who are like the guardians of the Oathgate or something. Note, do not use Stormlight in Shadesmar because apparently it attracts bad things. But actually, we can forget that note because they end up using Stormlight later and it's fine. Drehi and Scar are still back in Voidbringer occupied Kholinar. Maybe they're chilling with Moash. Of course, Vatha and the rest of Shallan's retinue is also still back there. The spren with scratched out eyes seems quite creepy. Azure confirms that she's a world hopper. She did come from another world. We learned that the spren with scratched out eyes is actually Adolin's dead sword. Azur's is not a dead spren because it's still in sword form, right? The giant spren are, the soul of the Oathgate, and there's like some sort of unmade, and the unmade sounds like it manifests in a big spooky way here in Shadesmar. There are like giant claws like reaching up out of the bead ocean, and that's the unmade. Okay, so Shallan can form the beads into objects. Touching one of the flames in Shadesmar that represent like people's minds lets you peer into the mind of a person, so that's kind of cool, and I suspect will come up again. The Oathgate spren had been corrupted by Odium. Adolin is basically being like Cal's emotional support dog. He's like really trying to keep Cal like on the right path. Azure's hair changes color. It goes to like a gray, and then eventually it goes back to the black it had been. And I don't know, maybe you'll find that significant. Who am I to say? Okay, Adolin is now the king, right? Because Elhokar's dead. Adolin's next in line. So there, Adolin is kind of technically the king. Okay, hey, we have a Szeth chapter. Wow, it's been a while. So, Szeth's spirit had not been properly reattached, apparently, which is responsible for his after image, which had come up in Edge Dancer and whatnot. I think we discussed it a little bit. He's still trying to join Nalan's Skybreaker club. Nightblood and Szeth is pretty great because Nightblood is so weird and Szeth is so like earnest and straightforward and just very literal. We learned that Nightblood can feed on Stormlight instead of the wielder's soul or whatever, right? It feeds on investiture, I guess, is probably how that works more accurately. So Nightblood, if you drew him in a storm, presumably you could just wield him however much you wanted, except you'd get battered by the storm, which would obviously suck. Okay, So all of these, like, Shin, like, not High Lords, but, like, the Shin Council, who had named Zeth truthless, they're all, like, kind of on his hit list now. And that is rough for them because, you know, Zeth kind of is pretty good at killing people. Zeth, he says he hears trembles from the spiritual realm. Is this why people hear voices of the dead? Are those literally like people talking in the spiritual realm that is like getting through to people who are very close to them or something? I don't know. Zeth is a Skybreaker now, which is pretty cool, but he cannot draw Stormlight. They do like kind of things in a weird order here. You don't bind Spread until the second ideal. And the Skybreakers surprised me by telling Zeth what all of the ideals are just immediately, just when he asks. You know, normally Brandon Sanderson is kind of stingy with the info, it feels, but not this time. So we learned that the ideals for the Skybreakers are Radiance, which is the first one that everyone says, Justice, Dedication, Crusade, and Law. So Justice is like just, you know, I will do what is just. Dedication is you're dedicating yourself to a greater cause because your judgment isn't always the best, but if you pick an ideal or something and follow whatever they say is right, then that is probably better than your own judgment. So you want to dedicate yourself to something true. And then Crusade, which is like doing some sort of crazy task for whatever you dedicated yourself to or something like that. And then Law, which is where you become the law, okay? And that's kind of cool. Nin, also Nalan, Herald of Justice, is going through a rough patch because his world has been shaken because they have failed to stop the Desolations from returning, which means that probably all those people they killed was actually not very helpful and probably just a bad thing to do. All right. We have a little Caledon flashback to him talking to, Tux, I want to say. He's like, I don't want to kill things or whatever. We have to protect our family, yada, yada, yada. Caledon says, so you kill someone else's family? And Tux says, well, eventually we'll be killing shellheads. And, like, what, they don't have a family? Like, the way Tux referred to them was like, you know, he thinks of them as like animals almost or something. And Caledon's obviously already far past that. So, like, it seems like kind of a curse of the Windrunners. I mean, if they're all going to walk down the same path Cal has walked down, like, eventually none of them are going to want to kill anything because everything, you know, everything's got a family. And that's not why specifically, but, you know. Okay, next chapter, chapter 92. Wow, we're speeding through them. We're back with Zeth. And I am just really digging how willing these Skybreakers are to answer questions. It's incredible. Zeth says that he used to have another voice in his mind, one that caused him to talk of the Radiance to become truthless. And to me, this sounds like a Spren who was probably trying to, like, bind Zeth. I don't know. Nightblood gives incredible advice. Fight him and win, he says. Oh, it's just that simple. Thank you. And Zeth is like, he's like, there's a criminal he just almost kills outright. And I wonder, is it Nightblood's influence that caused him to nearly kill a criminal without really considering it? Like, does Nightblood just make its wielders more bloodthirsty? Nightblood reveals that a name he used to know, a person, was Shashara, who Zeth notes sounds a lot like Shalash, Herald of Beauty, right? Is that a coincidence? He draws Nightblood, he runs this very bad man through, turning him into black smoke. Nightblood says that a person named Vivenna carried Nightblood for a long time, a name that may be significant to you if you have read Warbreaker. And he says a long time, which in Nightblood terms is very vague. Nightblood has no concept of time, so this could mean like anything. And hey, Zeth gains the ability to fly again, so that's cool. All right, next chapter. I ask, are they ever going to find a way to heal dead Spren? Like this Spren, Fallen 800, I would not define that Spren is dead. It is autonomous. It even makes decisions sometimes, which we're going to see in a little bit. It doesn't seem dead to me, so I would be almost surprised if they don't find a way to eventually heal these dead Spren. Brandon Sanderson really likes katas. Adolin and Caledon and Azure all do this kata together, which is like a series of movements to like focus yourself or whatever. And how do they all know the same one? It's kind of weird. It's like a little dance almost, and you don't just instinctively all know the same dance, right? And they must have all learned it from the same person, right? Azure says, I learned it from my swordmaster. You, Adolin, says likewise. Who's Adolin's swordmaster? Oh, it's Xyle. That's right. So Xyle is probably the common factor through all of that. At this point, Azure's hair is dark again. It was gray, now it's back to black, and her scars have faded. She says she came from a far land, came to Dawnshard. She came chasing a criminal. She came through cultivation's perpendicularity in the Horn Eater Peak, which we've heard of before. That's how Hoyd came into the world as well. We learned in Book 1. And Honor also has a perpendicularity, but it is unpredictable and dangerous and appears randomly. So, bada bing, bada boom. Alright, so Azure does not sound like a hail. She says that her sword is a pale copy of a shard blade. It cannot be summoned or dismissed. And we learned that some humans live in the cognitive realm. They're permanent residents. And also there are wine spren, which I thought was whack. Okay. Next. Alright, poor Dalinar. He is really just having a rough time of it. This is another flashback. At this point, they have met the Parshendi, and he is just being a really bad dad and like yelling at his sons, and it sucks. And I say that it's honestly incredible that they respect him so much, because he was like this until they were 17. He was either just like a war-crazed, anger man, or he was an incredibly depressed, broken anger man. And those were his two settings, right? But that means his sons both really respect him despite it, which I thought was kind of impressive, I guess, on their part. And yeah, if you had asked me at the end of Book 2 who had been the most broken, I would not have guessed Dalinar. Right? That's how it seems. Like at the end of Book 1, you're like, wow, Caledon was a slave. Everything went so bad for him. He watched so many people die. He has clearly had the worst past. And then you get to the end of Book 2, and you're like, wow, though, Shallan, I mean, she did strangle her dad while singing him a lullaby, and like that is just pretty. That might be worse than what Caledon had to go through. I don't know. It's like, and now Dalinar's thing, you're like, oh, hey, but Dalinar killed his wife, burned his wife alive. That's, whew. And yeah, it's just like everybody has horribly tragic backstories, and I mean we got seven backstories left, baby. So let's see. All right, next chapter. Hey, they're at like a lighthouse, and I say like, is that what's on the cover of Rhythm of War, which you had shown in a previous episode? And I don't think it is. So I'm like saying, you can do it, Caledon, stay positive, because he is really struggling after, of course, just watching all of his friends kill each other. And I really do not want Caledon to fall back into a horrible depression a la Book 2, Words of Radiance. Shadesmar has plants and cities and stuff, which is all just like, sure, okay, that makes sense, but when my first exposure to the world is that it's like an endless like bead land, and then even when they get to land, I had imagined it just being like flat, like obsidian sort of stuff. So like, I guess it makes sense that there's plants and cities and whatnot, but I hadn't considered it right away. All right, so Syl actually reveals that she had bonded a Night Radiant in the past. So bonding a Night Radiant is not a death sentence for a Spren. If the Night Radiant just dies, right, then the Spren is fine. They can go back and they can bond someone else later. All right. Next one. Alrighty, now we're back in present day, and it is starting to look like Dalinar snapping and Taravangian taking power. Like, that is starting to seem a lot more viable. There's a point where Navani goes to talk to Bridge 4, and she says, you might want to sit down for this. Caledon is dead. And they all laugh and laugh, because that's impossible. Caledon can't die. What's her name? Sadeas' wife, Ile. Ile Sadeas has a scarred guardsman, and I'm like, ooh, is that Mraize? Mraize has scars, and it turns out I think it is later. It's a bad day for Taravangian. Taravangian is stupid. Navani is like having to do all the world leader stuff herself because Dalinar is out of commission, because he's like, understandably. And Navani does the meeting really good. She's doing a great job of being a world leader, so that's dope. Chapter 97. Okay, we're back in Shadesmar, and wow, the Spren on this side are kind of messed up. Like, they look pretty whack. There's just a Shin-like human who runs the lighthouse. Caledon goes in, he says, ooh, do you like your fortune told? Caledon says, no, don't touch that crystal ball. Caledon touches it, whoa. And he gets a vision of the future, which, as we've heard many times, are of the enemy. He sees Dalinar in terrible danger, doomed without his help. The lighthouse keeper asks, what heightening are you? Which, again, if you've read Warbreaker, may be significant to you. That's how they describe investiture there. People who with with a lot of magic power in that world are said to be of a higher heightening. So this guy assumes that Caledon is of a heightening, but actually he has investiture in a different form, which is, of course, being a Night Radiant. In my land, the gods only catch glimpses of the spiritual realm. This guy says, Thalen. Okay, and he sees Thalen City as well. Caledon does. In his vision. That's where Dawnard's going to be in trouble. Okay, cool. Hey, we're back to Szeth. The days in his youth spent training with the Honor Blades is a line that comes up, and it's like, wow, Szeth has apparently trained with a number of the Honor Blades. Szeth was probably very important in Shin society to have been able to just train with the Honor Blades. Radiants are apparently more efficient than Honor Blades. Radiants use Stormlight more efficiently than people carrying Honor Blades. So if Szeth manages to actually like get Radiant powers instead of just using Honor Blades, he's going to be even stronger, which is pretty cool. Szeth is actually kind of having fun. He's experiencing what I describe as, I think, his first positive emotion we've seen him have so far in these books. But then he feels guilty about it, because how could he be happy when he's done so much terrible stuff? And I'm like, oh, darn it. It would be nice if people could be happy, but alas. Okay, and Nightblood here has a line which is very important. He says, talking about Vasher, right, the person who had carried Nightblood back in Warbreaker, teaches swords to people now. Vasher is Xyle, okay? They're one and the same, and that's just how it is, all right? And there was more evidence to this that I think I've forgotten, but this line pretty much spelled it out, I think. And there are other hints that I'm not going to quite go over because I wanted John to kind of figure them out and, you know. Okay. Hey, and Nalan is back. He's returned. He went off somewhere, and Szeth did a bunch of training with the Skybreaker, and then now Nalan is back. And he's got some secrets, but we're not going to learn them quite yet. Okay. So, Syl disguises herself, as a human. Even changes her skin color and everything. They have some contraption that is, producing water in Shadesmar, and I'm writing down, is it, just working through condensation? Because if it is, there's water in the air in Shadesmar, right? That's how condensation works. Shallan has some drawings that just aren't very good. She has actually a lot of bad drawings, and I'm like, is this one of her personalities doing drawings? What's up with that? What do you think of Caledon's future set? I ask John. Is that legitimate? Does he actually have to go save Dalinar? And John is like, oh, I don't know, maybe. And I'm like, oh, maybe. He's talking about Tara, and I'm like, or Tara, and I'm like, who's Tara? Who's this person? And John says, oh, well, that's come up actually a number of times in Caledon's backstory. It was someone he used to love or something, and I was like, well, I don't remember that at all. But it turns out John was right. Okay, and Caledon would not be good for Shallan, I write down, for some reason, and I don't remember why. I think it was because Caledon was like, oh no, it's cool to be depressed or something, and it just, I don't know. Sounds like the sort of thing he would say, doesn't it? Okay, chapter 100. We still haven't seen Dalinar's meeting with the Night Watcher. John and I are dying to see that at this point. There are legends of metal that can block a shard blade, metal that falls from the sky. What the heck? We have trapped in that shield something that may have blessed a Night Radiant, which sounds like a Spren, right? They trapped a Spren in the shield. And I believe this is where they're looking at the half shards that Teravancian had been working on. I guess that imprisoning Spren. All right, and at this point I was asking, isn't the fact that they're trapping Spren to make Fabrials kind of bad? We learned that's how Fabrials work. They're Sprens trapped in gems, being made to do stuff like make heat or whatever. And I say, isn't that kind of sketchy? Kind of bad to be trapping Spren to do this stuff? But then I think, I guess it must not be so bad, because if it was, surely Syl would have said something about it by now, right? Syl specifically, I think. Or maybe the Stormfather, but probably Syl would have said something about it if it was a bad thing they were doing. Dalinar is over in Azir, and the Thrill is also there. Or maybe he's in Yakaved now, I don't remember. No, it was Yakaved. And the Thrill is also there, which makes Dalinar, kind of go feral a little bit. And, he pulls out the Stormfather. He turns him into a sword against his will. Stormfather said, no, don't do that. Dalinar did it anyways, to open the Oath Gate, to get himself out of there, because he could not be near the Thrill, because he was about to totally crack like an egg. And everything is just going really badly for Dalinar. And there were no major repercussions for him pulling out the Stormfather as a sword, but still, just kind of a violation of trust and boundaries. Okay. Azure says that she has known royals. Being too open with strangers has gone poorly for her, and she knew somebody who had been in a state of royalty but had left it all behind. And this is while Adolin, of course, is talking about how, oh man, I have to be king or whatever. You can't just walk away from your responsibilities. And Azure is saying, sure you can. And that is not a very Alethi way of thinking about things. Okay, wow, that would have been the end of episode 2. Moving on to episode 3 in this one video mega episode. Chapter 102. They're in Spren Town. They see Spren made of vines. They see inky Spren, and I'm thinking these are probably like Windle or Ivory or, some of the other Spren that we've seen, and we're seeing them in like Shadesmar form, in their true form. There's also one with like cracked rocks with all light shining out. I'm like, maybe that's the Stone Wardens. Maybe that's their Spren. I don't know. They say that the prices of things that were brought in from the material plane to the cognitive realm vary in price based on how permanent the thing is in Shadesmar, which kind of implies that objects that were brought in from the material realm, from the physical realm, may just vanish from Shadesmar at some point. I don't know. How did they get there in the first place? We're not really sure. Caledon looks at a painting and he sees like some sketchy stuff. Some of golden lights, some are red shadows. I don't know what that was in reference to exactly. They talk about a place within Shadesmar called the Nexus of Imagination, and that just sounds too cool for them to not eventually go there. So keep that in mind. Nexus of Imagination, they're going to go there eventually, I bet. This painting Caledon is looking at comes from the far-off Court of Gods, which again may be relevant if you are familiar with Warbreaker. Read Warbreaker. It's a great reread, especially after reading this stuff, because you start to catch just a lot. Really enjoyed that reread. Syl, we learn, has a massive bounty on her head. She is called the Ancient Daughter. Okay. Whoa. Turns out Syl isn't just any old honor spren. Chapter 103. Dalinar, no, he has a new vision. He's just like dreaming. Sometimes, and he talks to old Noadan, who drops a lot of wisdom on him, and Dalinar is kind of going through some problems. And in this new vision, Noadan says, sometimes a hypocrite is nothing more than a man in the process of changing, which is something that Dalinar himself had said back a while ago, but this time he was the one that needed to hear it from someone else. Noadan, it turns out, is speaking to actual Dalinar and says the name Dalinar. Noadan is not seeing him as another person who Dalinar's mind has like inhabited, Quantum Leap style, which is a show. I was named after the main character of it, apparently. He's like, it's actually Dalinar there, and it turns out this isn't really a vision. This is actually just a dream, and therefore everything inside of it is figments of his imagination, which means that he's sort of dream therapy. He's kind of giving himself some dream therapy. I don't know. He's helping himself through some really tough problems in this dream. Noadan asks here, what is the most important step a man can take? And Dalinar is like, well, the first step, obviously. But the way he says it made John and I be like, well, if it were really obvious, we probably wouldn't just say it. So it's probably actually going to be a different answer. And we were both agreeing that Dalinar is probably going to realize what the real answer is at some important moment when the revelation gives him like that extra edge he needs to win a fight or something. I don't know. Okay. So chapter 104, Teft is still doing drugs. Oh no. This was like a meeting happened. I don't really remember. Yasna is like troubled by the fact that everyone else is learning Dawn Chant. So apparently Yasna is aware of some information that people are going to start to get that she does not want them to have. Also, Renarin had been the one carving all the countdowns in the second book, and like that just isn't a big deal, I guess now. And this was something where I was really complaining about Renarin. I was like, wow, Renarin sucks. Like, he apparently had the information. He knew when something bad was going to happen, and he probably knew what it was in greater detail than he portrayed with his dumb wall carvings, right? But instead of just, like, telling Dalinar, like, hey, I know this sounds bad, but I have a spren that might... Wait, we haven't learned that yet. I shouldn't say that yet. Renarin is seeing the future bad of the enemy. However, given that he's seeing the future, there are better ways to communicate this weird future sight than through bad wall carvings that don't really give Dalinar information that he could use to save lives, okay? And I'm just mad at Renarin because he's just bad. All right, chapter 105. Oh no, there's another flashback. At this point, Gavilar is dead. This is Gavilar's funeral. We are past the prologue of book 1. Or prologue of every book, actually. So there's a soulcaster who's looking down at Gavilar's dead body, touches his head, like a gem that had like replaced one of the king's eyes, and says, "The only part of you that is true." And it's very creepy, and the soulcaster is very cryptic. Dalinar, like after this funeral, is just like, oh no, he's like really broken up. This is where Elokar is like, we must vengeance pact. Let's all go to the Shadow Plains and kill those guys. And Dalinar is off. He's just going to go drink in his room all night. But then he hears from the other room, you must find the most important words a man can say. You cannot pick the destination, only the path, etc. And it's Yasna reading the Way of Kings aloud. And Dalinar goes in there and asks her to read the whole thing. And they both stay up and she reads it to him all night. And this was the first time Dalinar had heard the Way of Kings, which obviously, kind of kickstarted a very important part of his life. The part where John and I thought he was an S-tier character. And it is after hearing the Way of Kings for the first time that he decides, I need to change. And he remembers Evie talking about about the old magic. And he says, I'm going to go to the Night Watcher. And this wasn't something that he did out of desperation. This wasn't something that he did when he was drunk or whatever. This was like probably one of the most deliberate and clear-headed decisions he had made in quite a while. And I don't know. That's kind of cool. There we are. All right, so moving on. Hey, Zeth. Hey, Nalan. Nalan had went to visit Ishar, Herald of Luck, I think. We learned that the Shin have 8 honor blades. Taln did not have one. I wrote down Talon had one here. Actually, this is something we can fix, because back when we recorded this for real, I was like, oh yeah, Talon had an honor blade. But actually, we discussed Talon did not have an honor blade. Talon had just a normal shard blade, and John and I, and now that I realize that in hindsight, I think John and I talked about it. We were like, why is it just a normal shard blade? Where did he even get that after, coming out of hell or whatever? Either way, he did not have an honor blade. His honor blade is currently just who knows where, I think. I don't think the Shin have his. And they had 9. The Shin had 9, but 1 vanished. And that's because Zeth took it. And that's the Wind Runner's blade, which is currently in the possession of Bridge 4. Okay, nice. So Nalan reveals that he's a Skybreaker as well as a Herald. He actually has, bonded a Spren. So if he's holding an honor blade and he is a Skybreaker, he always has Skybreaker powers. If he was holding an honor blade of 2 other surges, he could presumably have 4 surges at once. I don't know. Bada bing, bada boom. All right, and he asks Zeth, what will you swear to? What will you dedicate yourself to? And Zeth was like, I don't know, I'll think about it. Okay, we're back with Dalinar, and Dalinar, after having this dream, has realized that he cannot wallow. He can't let the things he did a long time ago stop him from, saving the whole world today. So he actually manages to, in just 3 short days, power through this horrible, what would have been, crippling memory regainage for probably just about anyone else, and he says, no, all right, let's do this, let's get down to business. And he realizes, oh no, they're not actually going to attack where they thought. They're going to attack Thaylen City, bum bum bum. And I say bum 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 because this is where Caledon foresaw Dalinar's doom. Oh no. All right, so Taravangian had been hoping for Dalinar's collapse, but Dalinar has powered through. Why is Taravangian crying at this point? And I am worried that it's because maybe it's because letting Dalinar collapse is no longer an option. Maybe Taravangian has to go with Plan C now, and Plan C is actually something quite terrible. Bum, 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 bum. The Stormfather is for some reason able to see Venli, even though he can't see many of the other, the fused and those close to Odium. He doesn't say Venli specifically. He says a Parshendi, and John and I assume that it is Venli, and I'm pretty sure it is. I don't think it's ever confirmed totally, but okay. And Dalinar's like, okay, well, let's pull her into a vision. Oh, so it is confirmed. Moalock is currently in the Horneater Peaks. This is the one that gives death rattles, the unmade that gives death rattles. We learn that Dustbringers can burn stuff. Their surge one of their surges is called Division, and it lets them degrade, burn, or turn stuff to dust, which seems pretty strong. Malada, who is of course Taravangian's Dustbringer, seems like a real wild card, someone that he is not totally in control of. And Taravangian says that, okay, coming up soon here, we are going to launch an all-out attack. And who knows how that'll manifest exactly. Uh-oh, I hope we don't find out really soon. Okay. Caledon and Shallan and Adolin and Azure have become prisoners of the Honor Spren. Vale's thoughts are starting to enter into Shallan's mind. Shallan is not Vale right now. Shallan is Shallan, but Vale's thoughts are popping in, almost as if they are driving Shallan's body by committee a little bit. We learn that, oh man, the criminal that Azure was actually chasing is Nightblood. Looky there. All memories are bad, says Shallan. Adolin tells Shallan that he is the one who killed Sadius. Nice, I say. John and I agreed. We were going to high-five if we were in real life, but we're just talking over computers. Because it's so great to see our main characters actually like tell each other secrets and like be open and honest, and it's just beautiful, beautiful thing. And yeah, Caledon is up at the front of the ship, just being like way too cool, and I'm just like, oh, honestly, comparing yourself to Caledon would suck because he just does cool stuff everywhere he goes. Yeah, so he's like convinced these Spren that they have to like go do. I don't remember exactly, but he's like totally taking control of the situation. They were prisoners at the beginning of this chapter, and at the end, Caledon might as well be piloting the ship, right? He's like the captain at that point, borderline. And Shallan is looking at Caledon just like, oh, hello, very bedroom eyes. And Adolin is like seeing that, like we're seeing it through Adolin's perspective. Shallan looking at Caledon that way. And it's like, oh, geez, Adolin is totally aware of Shallan's feelings. We sure do got a love triangle on our hands. And they're being chased by Fused flying at them across an ocean of beads. So, moving onwards. We're back in Urithiru. And there are, like, all of these strata. We've heard about little strata in the walls, and we learned that they are thicker, and then they, like, branch off and get thinner, and they're all moving away from this one point. And it's like, whoa, the strata sound kind of like veins. And I was like, damn, I'm smart, because I just realized that. But then, like, the very next sentence, the characters in the book just say it. They're like veins throughout the tower. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm not so smart. All right, so Dalinar says, what is the most important, thing in warfare? And, I think it was Navani who says something. And he says, no, know your enemy, which is like straight out of Sun Tzu's The Art of War. So it turns out it doesn't matter if you're in our world or Roshar. Knowing your enemy is just a pretty important part of warfare. And yeah, we learned that the person totally was Venli, the Parsheni that he was seeing, or the Stormfather was seeing, because Venli is the one who gets yanked into this vision. Dalinar is trying to like talk to Venli. He's trying to say like, hey, let's not fight. Let's all just be peaceful. And I'm like, yo, Venli doesn't really have the authority to negotiate this sort of thing. But even if she did, Venli seems really uninterested until, that is, Odium kind of starts showing up and trying to like break into the vision and like tear it apart and burn them alive with his horrible white sun. And it is at this point as he is like starting to like tear apart this entire dream universe, and there's this cool scene where like all of the bricks are like floating apart and the boards are getting pulled up from the ground, and then the nails are getting pulled up out of the board and everything is floating apart except for Dalinar has like this bubble around him where he's holding everything together. And like it wasn't until this show of like super cool power where like Dalinar is standing up to Odium's power that Venli was like, she was totally uninterested. But now when this is happening and she sees this, she's like, well, maybe Dalinar, I don't know. And Dalinar is like walking down the staircase, and like the world is like reforming in front of him as he takes steps. And that was all cool, and Venli's about to fall into a horrible chasm, and she does start falling. Oh no, when she's going to get burned up by Odium's horrible white hot light. And then Dalinar's like, nope, yoink, and he dives down after her and like gets her out of the dream before she gets murdered, and then he gets murdered instead. And Odium never actually saw Venli in the dream. He didn't confirm that. And Odium does not seem interested in doing the whole champion thing to me at this point, based on a conversation they have. Okay. Chapter 110. When you next meet the swordsman who taught you that kata, tell him I'm looking for him, says Azure, as she kind of actually leaves. And now Caledon and Adolin and Shallan are going to go on the rest of this together. He asks, like, you know Zyle? And she says, we're old friends. Oof, okay. So, that's a lot of hints. Now that we know that Zyle's Vasher, it's a lot of hints about who Azure is. But I think John still doesn't know, so I'm just not going to say it. Alright, bye, Azure. Bye. Chapter 111. Amaram just sucks so bad. This is where Dalinar is gone over to Thaylen City, and he's talking to Amaram, and Amaram's like, so, we're going to betray these guys, right? And Dalinar's like, dude, shut up. And I'm like, dude, shut up. And everyone wants Amaram to shut up. And I just wonder, like, how did Amaram ever, get a good reputation? Like, he's so consistently bad, it seems. Renarin is like, hey, here in Thaylen City, are there any, like, great big gemstone reserves or something? And somebody responds vaguely, like, oh, we have gems. It's like, it's like a big city. We got some gems. And Renarin's like, haha, okay, bye. And he just, like, doesn't explain himself. And dude, come on. Because he clearly knows stuff that he's just not telling people. Cultivation. Oh, Dalinar asks, so Cultivation still lives? And someone replies, yes, you've met her. I think it was the Stormfather. And I'm, You do not remember, but normally she hides. and we also, or it's confirmed for us that the Night Watcher is not Cultivation. Cultivation normally hides, but Dalinar met her. And it sounds like the Night Watcher is a shadow of Cultivation, just like the Stormfather is a shadow of Honor. And this kind of seems to imply that Odium probably also has a shadow, right? And the Bondsmiths, when there were 3 of them, probably each one had bonded one of these 3 shadows. Okay, so there's probably going to be a Bondsmith for Cultivation and also a Bondsmith for Odium. But it also sounds like I think all the Bondsmiths are good guys. So I don't know how that works exactly. Maybe Odium's shadow is a good guy. I don't know. Okay, and Dalinar is still hearing this Unite Them voice, and it's starting to sound a little bit ominous somehow. Renarin is like shifting uncomfortably, and he just leaves, and it's like, what do you know, Renarin? God, tell us. All right, something is coming, a storm, bum, 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 bum. And everything starts to go terrible all at once. They're in like this big meeting. So, Everstorm is approaching ahead of schedule. That's bad. Suddenly, the Dawn Chant is cracked. This book that's written in the Dawn Chant is cracked open, and all these world leaders are getting span read messages all at once, telling them that, it turns out the Voidbringers came from another world. Using the powers of Spread and Surge, they destroyed their home. They came begging for ours. These Voidbringers know no songs. They look soft with no shell. They have only one heart. Oh, no. Voidbringers are the humans. The Dawn Singers were Parshmen. Parshmen are the natives to Roshar. The humans came in seeking refuge, and afterwards kind of started killing everyone and enslaving the natives, and that's it's not so cool. Not so cool at all. So suddenly they're actually kind of fighting this war from the moral low ground, in a sense, which is bad. Taravangian is the one who orchestrated this, and as if that wasn't enough to suddenly make everybody second guess whether or not they want to be part of Dalinar's coalition, it is also let out at this point that Dalinar wanted to name himself High King, raise himself above the seat of leader of the Alethi alone to some sort of higher power almost. And that doesn't look so good that he did that and was kind of keeping it a secret when he was telling everybody they was going to serve as equals, right? And also, oh no, oh god, it's also let out into the open that Dalinar did meet with Odium in not one but 2 of his visions, which of course Navani had taken notes on. Oof, that's a lot of stuff that all went bad at once. Suddenly, Taravangian saying that he was going to launch an all-out attack in the previous chapter makes a lot of sense. We get a chapter on Tara, right? This is Caledon's old girlfriend. It was like this weird little flashback scene. She says, maybe someday you'll learn to be there for the living, not just for the dead. And I don't know, Tara seemed to be kind of up on her high horse in this one. I'm not sure I totally agree with her. And hey, at that point, at the end of this flashback, Caledon and Shallan and Adolin make it to Thaylen City, sort of. They can see where Thaylen City is supposed to be in it, but it's surrounded by an army of fused is the problem, and that's not good. All right. It turns out that the humans came from an Earth-like planet, which is why Shinovar, which we saw back in one of the tradesmen's Risen, back in Risen's one of Risen's interludes, we saw Shinovar, and it was like, oh yeah, the grass there is like just grass, right? And that's why the humans were given Shinovar, because it was the most Earth-like part of Roshar. The old Radiants discovering this, that it was humans who were actually the Voidbringers, is in part what caused the Recreants. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because everything on this planet has carapace. Everything is like lobster or crawdad-esque, right? Kind of. It's like a lot of shells. And that's what the Parshendi got. Like, it makes sense when you think about it. The Parshendi are the natives to this land. And yeah, Taravangian kind of did it. Taravangian kind of obliterated the coalition, which does stink a little. Okay, so throughout all of that, holy moly. Time for more epigraphs. I'm really trying to speed through all this. We're only an hour and 4 minutes in. We got Hessi's Mythica, which was a lot of information on the Unmade, which does kind of suck. It kind of makes me want to read through all of it because it all seems somewhat important. Okay, so the Unmade, not simply spirits of the void, night shadows who moved in the night. They were specific types of spren endowed with vast powers. Yada yada yada. Each of the Unmade has a dozen names. The Unmade were still spren. As such, they were much manifestations of concepts and divine forces. They were individuals. The Unmade are still among us, says this author. I realize this may be contentious. Haha, no, we got it. Yelignar named Blightwind. Yasnakolin called his... I'm not going to read through all this, I don't think. Swallowing a gemstone to engage this process, that's Yelignar. Getting the power of Yelignar. Oh, wow. Yelignar is great. Perhaps the power of all surges compounded into one. He could transform any Voidbringer into an extremely dangerous enemy. Wow. Yelignar is said to consume souls. Ja'anat was most feared by the Radiants. They spoke extensively to her ability to corrupt spren, though only lesser spren, whatever that means. Oh. That's interesting, because the... Okay. Let's touch on that later. Ja'anat was often regarded as an individual, while others, like Moalak or Ashertmarn, were seen as forces. Nergal was known for driving forces into a battle rage. Ooh, hey, we just got the name of the thrill. That's cool. Nergal. Nergal. He did this to both sides of a conflict, Voidbringer and human. This is less self-aware. Convinced that Nergal is still active on her shard. This accounts for the Alethi thrill. Yep, confirmed. Moalak is very similar to Nergal, granting visions of the future and... most commonly at the transition point between realms when a soul was nearing the Trampoline Halls. Okay, so this granting visions of the future is not specifically a death rattle thing, but that does seem to be how it primarily manifests. Yep, bum Ba'ada Mishram to be the most interesting of the Unmade. She is said to have been keen of mind, a high princess among the enemy forces, their commander during some of the desolations. I do not know how this relates to the ancient god of the enemy named Odium. Ooh. Ba'ada Mishram might be the one that Gavilar trapped in a little gemstone. Which he gave to Zeth. Remember that? Way back in Prologue of Book 1? Very little information about Ba'ada Mishram in more modern times. I can only assume she, unlike many other of them, returned to damnation and was destroyed during a Har Yetyam. Not so sure. Okay. Chamorish, the Dust Mother, has some of the most varied lore surrounding her. We haven't seen anything about her yet, so we will find out about that. Raishafir, the Midnight Mother, appears to have been destroyed during Ahara Yetyam. Nope, wasn't. Then the question remains: who is the ninth Unmade? Is it truly Daigonarthis? If so, could their actions have actually caused the complete destruction of Aemia? We'll find out. Okay, moving on. Holy moly. Interludes, Venli. Hundreds of ships sailing to Thalen's city. They fused, the fused fight. They say, alright, so one of the fused, talking to the modern day Parshendi, the fused say that they fight to give the world to modern day Parshendi. And I'm like, well, I'm not so sure, because like they're killing the Parshendi. So you can't really give them the world after that, can you? I guess they're only killing some of them, though. Maybe they just see it as necessary losses. And they're kind of fulfilling a bit of a vengeance pact of their own against the humans. We get a Risen chapter. Risen broke her legs a long time ago, and she got a little bird thing. A larkin, it was called. And since then, we learned that she has stopped being a trader, a traveling tradesman. She is now a financier of sorts for Queen Ven. She keeps the books. It's a bummer that she is disabled. Can Stormlight fix that? I right? We learn out. No, it cannot. She actually asked, and like they kind of tried. All right, so she still has the Larkin, and that can suck Stormlight out of people. We saw it do it in Edge Dancer, right? Darkness, he was called. Nalan used one on Lift. She's talking to her old Bapsk, who says, "One can believe in a story without believing it happened." And I liked that line. That was cool. They go to a vault of big gems. Is this what Renarin was talking about, I wonder? They see the king's king's drop, which appears to be like kind of a perfect gem. Maybe the sort that could trap a Mega Sprint. Maybe an Unmade. I don't know. Cheery Cheery is the name of the Larkin, and I'm like, don't let Cheery Cheery near that gem because it's apparently held the same Stormlight for thousands of years, and that would be a shame if she sucked it all out. Uh-oh, there's a thief who's come into the vault. And the thief apparently does not mind being hit by crossbow bolts. Maybe they're using Stormlight. Uh-oh. And no, it turns out they're using Void Light. It is one of the Fused, and it's doing illusion stuff. So it kind of looks like maybe the Fused can do everything that the Radiants can do. Apparently, and the Larkin sucks all the Void Light out of the Fused, and then it gets killed because now it ain't got no light. And the Larkin grows after eating the Void Light. Presumably it also grows when it eats Stormlight? I don't know. Either way. Makes you wonder how big this Larkin's going to get. John and I predicted, like, dragon-sized by the end. And I'm kind of sticking to it. And we have another Teft interlude. Teft, uh-oh, they are in your theory. They're going to where Bridge 4 all hangs out. And he comes across 3 corpses, and he uses the word corpses to describe them, which was very rude and misleading to me, because they're not actually dead. One of them is. But another one is Rock. And I was like, no, Rock's dead. But Rock is not dead, so don't worry. Teft is just being a little overdramatic. So, one of Bridge 4, and it's honestly a guy I didn't even remember the name of, so I don't feel that bad, I guess. He was killed. He was the one who had been holding the Honor Blade that day. They've been rotating it amongst themselves. And the Honor Blade was taken. Oh, no. Teft totally blames himself for this because apparently whoever came in was wearing a Bridge 4 coat, and Teft had sold his for drugs. Bum, 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 bum. So he totally blames himself, but I'm kind of thinking, like, dude, well, I mean, they didn't have to use his Bridge 4 coat. They could have found another way, presumably, to, you know, get in there and kill this guy, right? But Teft totally blames himself. Okay. Flashback. Dalinar is on a boat, and he is sailing across the sea to go to the Night Watcher. And he has maybe his first vision. It was a dream. He doesn't really remember it that well, but I'm thinking, like, well, he said that he didn't remember some of his early visions. Maybe this is the point. Maybe he's already started having them. Right, even in this flashback where he's on his way to see the Night Watcher. And I just wonder at this point, why did Brandon Sanderson decide to call all the birds in this world chickens? Like, it's such a little goofy bit of world building. I don't know, it doesn't really seem to have much of a purpose. It's like a look kind of funny, but it's distracting to me as well. And hey, he meets the Night Watcher. Hooray, it's finally happening. He's meeting the Night Watcher. She sounds incredibly spooky. She's crawling around on the ground like some sort of spooky shadow salamander or something. But she has a human face. He asks not for strength or whatever, not for immortality. He asks for forgiveness. And that seems a little abstract for the Night Watcher. She does not really seem to totally understand what he's on about. She's like trying to tempt him with other things she could give him. Oh, yada, 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 yada. One of them is a blade that bleeds darkness and cannot be defeated. And that sounds a lot like Sword Nimi, a lot like Nightblood, right? So, like, why does she have the authority to offer him Nightblood? What's up with that? And then somebody else arrives. Oh, my God. It's Cultivation. Whoa. Cultivation is like, well, Night Watcher here. I let her hang out in this clearing to learn about humans. I personally never intervened, but this time I'm thinking maybe I will. And Cultivation says, in doing this, I provide to him a weapon. Who is him? I don't know. She says that she is not going to give him a boon and a curse per se. She's going to give him instead a pruning, a careful excision to accommodate growth. And she chops out all of his memories that are turning him into a total wreck. And as sort of an exchange, she also takes away the memories of his wife. But those were kind of like parts of the memories that made him a total wreck. So I don't know if that was kind of... I don't know. She took away his wife and also the memories of him being a total monster. So that he could become the Dalinar that we know and love today. And great job, Cultivation, I'm thinking. Chapter 115. Caledon's kind of desperate. He really wants to get to Dalinar and save this guy, so... yada yada. Is this the part where we start switching perspectives all the time? I think it might be. Alright. At this point, Yasna is walking up through this like tower, going to a cathedral where Renarin is like kneeling. And he has a void spren or like a corrupted spren or something. It's not a normal spren. He's not actually a truth watcher. His spren is like bright red, looks very evil. And Yasna's like, oh man, time to kill him. And then she decides not to kill him, which is great. Really terrific. He had foreseen her killing him, and this is also nice because it means that his visions can be wrong. That's cool. We're back to the ships where the Fused is talking to some of those Parshendi, and he says, you are here to do what you are told. As reward, you will receive further opportunities to serve, which doesn't really sound like a great reward to me. Like, how about some cookies or money or something? I don't know. And, yeah, very, you know, like, kind of, these Parshendi are still being treated like slaves. Now they're just slaves to the fused instead of the humans, which is not awesome. Odium is actually here. He's going to oversee this conflict personally. Urithiru is under attack. Somebody probably used that honor blade they stole from Bridge 4 to open the Oath Gate and allow enemy forces in from Kholinar. Uh-oh. Thunderclasts have come into the city. These are the giant stone monsters into Thalen City, and they're starting to, like, smash stuff up. Uh-oh. Odium also brought the Thrill with him. Hopefully Dalinar doesn't feel too bad about that. We learned that Void Spren can apparently, like, bind humans, or, like, Odium somehow, like, takes over a bunch of these people, and the people he took over were, in fact, Amaram and his forces. They are now defected against their will, although they might not have taken that much convincing. Chapter 116. Alright, so, yeah, it looks like the enemies are after all of these gems. They're after this vault, which Risen had managed to defend, more or less, right? But she is now trapped inside of it. And, yeah, are they after all these gems because they're, like, the source of the radiant power? Like, are they gonna... Is it, like, every time they attack a city, they're gonna try to hit the gem reserve just to, like, stunt the radiance? Or are they after that specific big gem? I don't know. There are Voidbringer Edge Dancers, it turns out, who, like, ice skate around. All of the Voidbringers are way better at using their powers than the Radiance because they've been doing it for way longer. Lifetimes, even. It turns out the King's Drop was indeed the only target. Hey, Risen. Risen's alive. That's great. Amaram's army was super duper possessed. That is confirmed. Renarin is indeed a human bound to, like, an Odium Spren. There was a line where, let's see... Pattern. Oh, we're back in Shadesmar. Pattern says, I do not like being stabbed. And Adolin sagely replies, wise words, friend, wise words. And I thought that was a little bit funny. Shallan just, like, walks up and addresses the sentinels at this Oath Gate for Thalen City, which is closed, by the way. It's locked, right? Or they're just not allowed in from Shadesmar. I don't remember. I think they're just not allowed in from Shadesmar. And yeah, Shallan looks up at these sentinels and she just, like, yells up to them. These just giants spread with spears, and I'm like, whoa, Shallan, that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of funny just imagining her being like, hey up there. Odium says that grabbing the King's Drop is a precaution. He says that today they grabbed the conduit of Odium's freedom, the Bane of Roshar. Bum, 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 bum. What could he be referring to? We'll find out soon. Yanagon is learning how to be king, and he's getting better at it, I think. He's like a little scene when he's in a boat with some of his advisors, and he's like, we should go back and help, and they're like, no. Adolin is just, like, randomly swinging a sword around, but he's trying to, like, blend in with a bunch of Shallan's illusions back in Shadesmar, and I'm thinking, like, there's got to be something more useful Adolin could be doing here, and there almost definitely is. I think I'm right about that. And the Sentinels of the Oathgate revealed that, like, guys, we just cannot let you through. It's like a law, basically, of nature, and it cannot be broken or bent. And it's like, well, that sucks. How are they going to get to Thalen City? I don't know. The Skybreakers, Nalan reveals, are actually going to side with the Voidbringers. The Voidbringers were right, kind of, right? This is their home, right? The humans have taken it. Now it's time to give it back to its rightful owners. So the Skybreakers, Nalan and all them, and maybe Zeth, I don't know, he's thinking about it, are actually going to be kind of on the team bad guys. Although, really, I don't know if anybody is bad guys except for, like, Odium and the Fused. Like, I think that all of our standard, still non-fused Parshendi are arguably also good guys. Caledon runs out of Stormlight and goes plummeting into a sea of beads, and that's very unfortunate. Dalinar is, like, just walking up totally solo towards this massive army, including Amaram and all of his men. And then Lift also shows up. Lift says, oh yeah, I have a weapon, but he doesn't like hurting people, and it's like, haha, it's kind of funny, you little goofball. Dalinar says to Lift, someone stole a gem, get it back. She says, no sweat. She just takes off. She's like, alright, I don't need specific directions, let's go. Adolin gets stabbed because he is in fact being useless and just kind of standing amongst a bunch of illusions for no reason. Oh heck. At this point, Caledon bringing everyone to the Oathgate seems like a little bit of a disaster, doesn't it? Shallan pulls a wall out of the material realm, which one of the Fused who is flying crashes into. And it makes me wonder, like, is it still in the physical realm, or did she actually yoink it out of the physical realm and into the cognitive realm? Right? I don't know. And at this point, things are going very, very poorly, okay? Adolin has been stabbed. Caledon is out of Stormlight and drowning in a sea of beads. Shallan cannot open the Oathgate. Amaram and his entire army have been possessed. Dalinar is facing down Odium, only armed with a book. Like, it seems very bad for the good guys at this point. Skybreakers are indeed choosing. The Dawn Singers, our homies in Shadesmar, are totally which is a League of Legends trade means out of mana. I'm using it for out of Stormlight here, whatever. Caledon is Shalon is telling him, like, you have to say the next words and we can get out of here, or we can do cool stuff, I don't know. And she doesn't say get out of here specifically. But Caledon is struggling to say the next words. He's really struggling. Your freedom if you win. Our lives if humans win. Oh, this is Dalinar trying to negotiate with Odium. He says, yeah, your freedom if you win. Our lives if humans win. The Night Watcher had lied, I write down. What about? Was this about Lift getting older? I don't know. Oh, this is. The Night Watcher had lied about Lift. Lift is, in fact, aging, even though she apparently thought she had asked the Night Watcher to not make her age anymore. Zeth comes flying down from the sky and totally, like, takes the head off of Thunderclast, and he's apparently fighting with the good guys, which is pretty cool. It turns out that he had chosen Dalinar as his beacon of morality. When he swore his oath of dedication, it was to Dalinar, because even though Zeth is, he judges himself to be incapable of determining what is right and wrong, he thinks that Dalinar does a pretty good job at it. So he says, all right, there we go, that's the plan. Holy moly, an hour and 20 minutes in. Okay, so Ash, it turns out, is the name of the herald who has been destroying all of the depictions of herself. She was in that interlude a long time ago where they were with the thieves and they destroyed that statue or whatever. She's destroying paintings, yada yada. She's probably the one that scratched the face off of that statue that we saw in the prologue and also in a previous chapter when they were in the castle in Kholinar. And Ash, I think, is Shalash, Herald of Beauty, right? And she found Talon. She found Talenolot, Elin, who I guess Mraize had pointed her in the direction of. Renarin had always known that his friend was corrupted. This is after Yasna's just not killed him, which is cool. Renarin had also known that Yasna was coming. He had seen his own death, and he had accepted it. He was just ready for Yasna to murder him. But Yasna doesn't, because it's her, it's her cousin. It's her cousin. She can't just kill her cousin. That'd be mean. Very rude. Renarin sees glimpses of the past and future. Dalinar is like, all right, let's do this Odium Contest of Champions. And Odium suddenly is like, all right. And suddenly it seems like this is what Odium always wanted. He says, I've chosen my champion already. I've been preparing him for a long, long time. And it turns out that Odium's champion is Dalinar. Bum, 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 bum. And that seems kind of like cheating to me, doesn't it? Like, you couldn't go up to a king. Let's say I'm a king, and I go up to another king, and I say, all right, let's decide who gets, winner takes all. Winner of a battle of champion gets both of our kingdoms. How's that sound? And the other king is like, well, all right, my champion's pretty good. And I'm like, okay, who's your champion? And he says, my greatest warrior, Sir Edgar. And I'm like, okay, well, my champion is you. It just doesn't work that way. It's stupid. Either way, Odium is trying to pull it off. Odium is trying to convince Dalinar to be his champion. He says, I made you kill her, Dalinar. I caused all of this, Meanwhile, Navani is up, like, fighting off some of Amaram's men who are trying to kill her. And she is using a Fabrial as a taser, which is pretty cool. So she is kind of capable combatant in her own right. Dalinar is slumped forwards, head bowed, as he is getting pummeled with all of the memories of the horrible things he's done in his past, which Odium is just, like, smacking him with over and over again, right? And he looks kind of a lot like we saw in Cal's vision of Dalinar's demise, right? So this is SpaghettiOs. To the Parshendi, we learn Odium appears as a Parshendi with golden carapace. So he just, to whoever is looking at him, he looks like their idea of, like, just of a king, or like a very kingly, opulent king. I don't know. Could you provide this human with an appropriate housing for Yelignar? Odium says to somebody, talking about Amaram. And, oh, that was her name, Ayasawan. Doesn't she have Yelignar? And, oh, no, it turns out she actually died as a result of swallowing the Yelignar stone. So Elhokar's wife, the Queen of Kholinar, no more. Now it's Amaram's turn. We learned that Amaram has been serving Odium for some time. Caledon is trying so hard to say the words back in Shadesmar. You can do it, Cal. No, he can't. So Yasna didn't kill him. This means that Renarin's visions of the future are not absolute. They might be wrong, which I kind of like. It would be kind of lame if they were always spot on. I don't know. And here is where, oh my god, man, if Dalinar needed a revelation, this is the time. This is where he realizes that it's not, the answer wasn't the first step. That is not the most important step a man can take. It is the next step. Always the next step. Which is kind of cool. And it's a stronger version of the first step, because the next step, when you've taken 0 steps, the next step is the first step. So this includes the first step and goes beyond. It's a very powerful answer to the question. And he's saying, yeah, you just got to keep moving. And it makes a lot of sense. And he says to Odium, who's trying to tell him, like, yes, be my champion. I will take your pain. None of this was your fault. And Dalinar's like, no, you cannot have my pain. You cannot have responsibility for the things I've done, right? And he says that, like, that was my past, but I have to keep moving forward. And, right, hey, now we're in the next chapter. It cannot be a journey if it doesn't have a beginning. And he's saying that his beginning was probably Gavilar's funeral, right, where he had done all of this terrible stuff, but then that was when he decided to turn his life around, and that was his beginning, and he's not going to let Odium take that from him. If I must fall, I will rise each time a better man. So Dalinar is just so cool, so consistently, well, except for in his flashbacks. But as we've established, that's pre-beginning Dalinar. That doesn't even count. Okay, so Syl says to Caledon, who just cannot say the words for the life of him, maybe you don't have to save anyone, Caledon. Maybe it's time for someone to save you. And Dalinar sticks one hand out to one side, and he grabs the cognitive realm, which, I don't know, kind of whack. And he sticks his hand to the other side, and he grabs the spiritual realm, and he merges the 3 realms briefly, and he basically summons Honor's Perpendicularity. And it sounds kind of like maybe Dalinar briefly becomes a god. I don't really know. Not Honor specifically, but he calls himself Unity. I am Unity. And it's kind of whack. And Venli is like totally awestruck. And as he reaches into the spiritual realm and he kind of gets a handful of that, he hears Evie's voice. Probably actually the actual voice of Evie's spirit coming across from the spiritual realm. And Evie forgives him, which is huge, right? So yeah, he summons Honor's Perpendicularity. When he does this, Shallan and Adolin and Caledon all have a pathway back into the physical realm. Also, when this happens, all of the beads in like a mile radius just like start overflowing with Stormlight. Also, Town, who's of course the totally crazy herald, actually becomes cognizant. He becomes, like intelligent. He can talk and whatnot without just repeating the same stuff. Okay. Teft, holy shit, I'm sorry, I'm like jumping all over the place. Teft, back in your Thiru, managed to say the next words, the second words for him. I will protect those I hate, even if the one I hate most is myself. And as of this moment, Teft is no longer simply a squire of Caledon. Teft is now a full-fledged Radiant himself. He is a Windrunner now. So terrific. That's going to go great, I'm sure. Yasna is charging through the street. Apparently the fact that the spiritual and cognitive realms are all like, the lines between them have been blurred, makes her soul casting just like way stronger. Like it's very easy to convince things to be other things for her right now. So she is charging through the streets, just like demolishing people by soul casting them into smoke and oil and all sorts of crazy stuff. She's just like tearing through people. Yasna is incredibly powerful. And there's a funny line where, so Szeth had the sheath of Nightblood stolen at one point, and Nightblood was like draining out all of his life force, and Szeth was like dying, and then Lift was trying to save him and like channel her Stormlight into him, use her regrowth, and then Nightblood had started killing her as well, and they all had these like gray veins like creeping up their faces and up their arms and stuff. And then Dalinar starts like flooding everything with Stormlight, and suddenly Nightblood is satiated. Nightblood's okay and good to go, and these guys both get full of Stormlight and they're fine. However, it sounds like even the like black veins that Nightblood have been putting all of their bodies like leave scars or something, and they might be permanently marked. It sounds like Szeth's went onto his face and Liv's went up her arms, so that might be permanent. Okay, and there's this like Avengers scene where Dalinar gets radiance from all of these other orders, right? Like Talon and Ash show up. He has, of course, Shallan representing the Light Weavers. We have Yasna from the Elsecallers. We have the Truth Watchers in Renarin. We have Szeth is there, and he represents the Skybreakers. We have Caledon from the Windrunners. We have, of course, Dalinar himself from the Bondsmiths, Lift from the Edge Dancers, And all we're missing is the Dustbringers because Mulata is not there. However, there are a couple of other humans or people in the square, right? Adolin and Venli are nearby, so I theorize that one of them is actually going to be a Dustbringer, right? Or wait, or that Ash is a Dustbringer and one of them is going to become a Will Shaper. I mean, Venli doesn't got that Spren following her around, so that's my theory. Because obviously, Talon is a Stone Warden, right? So, yeah, I think that's got to be what's going on. And I actually feel pretty confident about that theory. So, bada bing, bada boom. And yeah, they do this cool Avengers moment where all 9 of these people are standing in a square together with, also Adolin and Venli. And they are representing basically all of Knights Radiant. And okay, time to go on. Only 3 chapters left. These are all very long chapters, though. Let's just crank this out. And yeah, I'll be this is less than 2 hours, not even a problem. So, chapter 120, Amaram does indeed swallow Yelignar Stone, and he is going to be doing that. Okay. Shallan summons like a whole army of like shadow illusion army men, and the enemy, being so caught up in the thrill, is happy to just slash at and just take down illusions, which Shallan is having fall into even like realistic corpses. And Zeth is looking at all of these and saying, these were the shadows in the darkness, the ones that whispered of his murders. And I'm like, oh geez, I don't know, that's kind of crazy. Amaram is talking to Caledon. He's like, I created you, I forged you. And I'm like, shut up, Amaram. And this chapter is actually named The Spear That Will Not Break, which makes a lot of sense because Caledon's response is kind of, heavily paraphrasing, but he's kind of saying that, like, you didn't forge me, you didn't make me stronger. You had the people in your army, or I guess I was already really, really strong, and you simply, you simply tested me, right, and bent me really, really far, and saw that I would not break, right. So by putting Caledon through all this hardship, his strength was revealed, but it's not like Amaram made him strong. He was already that strong, right? And I don't know, I kind of like that. It kind of made sense. Amaram is totally dual-wielding shard blades, which is cool. We have confirmed now that I think it's the first time we've seen that happen, but, I mean, they're light, right? You can just swing them around. Why has nobody dual-wielded these things before? Dalnar just steps forward into the thrill, which is like this big red mist. That's like how it manifests physically. At this point, I'm just like, where are Shallan's brothers? Like, we haven't seen them. And I feel like they were supposed to show up a long time ago. I don't know why I thought of that. Okay, Yasna fixes the wall, and she's like, oil is like clawing out of her hand up it, and it's the cover of the book. So, hey, look at the cover of the book, or even if you watch the YouTube videos, the thumbnails for the YouTube videos, which are the cover of the book. And that, hey, that's cool that we saw the scene that is the cover. Okay. I realize now that in the Recreants, right, everyone drove their swords into the ground, specifically shard swords, shard blades. They always manifest as swords, right? However, we've seen, just among the few Knights Radiant that we've seen in this book so far, Lift manifests hers as like a pole, Caledon manifests his as a spear, right? Like, why are all of the dead shards swords? Why are none of them other weapons if they can be manifested in like any way you want? I don't know. Kind of weird to me. Okay. Every fused that gets taken down, it just instantly goes and claims another body off of the Parshendi on the ships. So they've got kind of like an endless army facing them, more or less. Apparently Shallan's illusions have like a little bit of resistance to them, like they're kind of corporeal. Like they, you hit it and your hand doesn't just go right through. It actually offers some, like it has a physical form, which is kind of whack. We learn that Adolin's Shardblade is named Maya Laren. The Thunderclass kind of looks like a Chasm Fiend. That's interesting. Shallan once sent a sketch of the like Voidbringers, and it looked like a Chasm Fiend, and maybe it was actually Thunderclass, and they just actually look like Chasm Fiends. I don't know. Okay. The Thrill really likes Dalnar. The Thrill, as we discussed back in Hessi's Mythica epigraphs, isn't so much a personality as it is just like a force, and it seems to be pretty mindless. When Dalnar walks into it, it seems like happy to see him. Like it's got kind of like dog when its master returns home vibes. It's like jumping up, licking his face. Metaphorically speaking, Venli was like kind of saying the first oath there. Holy moly! We learned that Timber has subdued the Void Spren, giving Venli her form. Venli sucks in Stormlight. She is in fact a Radiant. So bada bing, bada boom. My theory about her being a Will Shaper is starting to look pretty good. Adolin uses the Shard Blade as a throwing weapon, which is pretty dope. Renarin is actually being quite capable. Renarin heals crazy fast because he has the power of regrowth. Lift also has this power. Does she also heal crazy fast? And when I say crazy fast, I just mean faster than other Knights Radiant. We learned that Zeth has trained with all 10 surges, which does make sense. To train being an edge dancer, he literally practiced ice skating. So that's the way they move, like, super gracefully. Caledon is like 1v2ing a Yelignar empowered Amaram and a Fused, which is pretty cool. He's doing pretty darn good. Adolin like runs to Shallan. He's like, Shallan, and he reaches for her, and because she was like doing this thing where she was holding hands on either side with Vale and Radiant, and they were all walking and like empowering each other or whatever. And it turns out that Shallan was actually an illusion as well, and so was Vale. And it turns out Radiant was the real one because Radiant is the best at being a Knight Radiant, I suppose. So that's the one Shallan needed to be right then, but it's just kind of weird moment. Yasna has finally decided to teach Shallan soulcasting, which Shallan had kind of been resisting, like having Yasna as a teacher ever since Yasna's return. But also, it just seems like kind of a weird time to be, like, they're in a conflict, and Yasna's like, this is the perfect time to start explaining this stuff to you. Haha, what a goof. Alright. Renarin is like, alright, time to take back Urithier, and he cracks his neck and cracks his knuckles, and he's going to go for it. The few seem kind of confused by Renarin, like maybe they think he's a bro because he has a corrupted or a void sprint or whatever. Renarin is like, he like sees the future stretch out before him, which he like sees on the ground, like it gets like a stained glass pattern or whatever that only he can see, I think. And he says, things are about to go pretty bad for you guys. He's a little snarky. And then, boom, Teft comes bursting through the Oath Gate, and now that Teft is a Radiant, it turns out he managed to retake Urithiru himself. No Renarin required. And now he's here to help, and they're turning to Renarin, and they're like, what are your orders, sir? And Renarin's like, whoa, guys, can I just sit down? I've been more useful today than I've been the rest of my life put together, okay? Like, give me a minute. And they're like, haha, fair enough. So, I mean, his line is, I think I used up all my Radianting for the day. He literally says that. It was kind of funny. All right, and Dalinar, they get the... Lift and Zeth had been off on a mission to collect the King's Drop and bring it to Dalinar, and they had succeeded, and they got it to him. And Dalinar uses the King's Drop, that big ruby, to successfully trap the Thrill. And now it is imprisoned in this big ruby, which is pretty dope. Amaram and is finally getting the leg up on Caledon. He's about to kill him, which is a bummer. But I mean, Caledon was against very difficult odds. And it is at that point that Amaram gets struck through the back of the head by a big arrow, which does kill him instantly. And bada bing, bada boom, it was Rock. Rock wielding a shard bow. Rock, the one who John and I had theorized was some sort of great warrior, but who has basically sworn himself to pacifism. He is no longer the fourth son. He is a cook, which is of course a higher calling. So Rock has killed Amaram in order to save Caledon, which is obviously dope, but he's not happy about it. All right. 2 chapters left. So, what were Ash and Talon doing through the whole battle? I have no idea. Moash, we get to see him again, and he is shockingly not feeling fulfilled and satisfied by the fact that he killed the king. What's up with that? Vengeance didn't do the trick for him? Who could have foreseen this? Everybody thought that after he got vengeance, he'd be really happy, right? No. We learned there are 9 orders of Fused, and my guess is that each order of Fused is like a counterpart to a specific Order of Knights Radiant as well, right? And they're probably missing Bondsmiths, if I had to guess, if they're just missing 1. All right. This lady Leshwi, this like Spren who's telling Moash what to do or whatever, says, you have given him your pain. He will return it when you need it. And I'm like, who is the Odium? Has he given Odium his pain? I don't know. They actually respect Moash because he killed the king, and he's like a cool guy. I don't know. They're like... Well, they're cool by their standards. He's cool by their standards, I guess. And at this point, I'm wondering, like, could Moash end up becoming Odium's champion, and Caledon is the other one? Because they do parallel each other really well, right? They're very similar backstories. They parallel each other really well. I don't know. So that's my theory right now, is that maybe that'll happen. They ask Moash to kill a god. What? What's up with that? So Odium was going to make Dalinar remember all of his bad memories all at once, and it was going to be too much for him. But because cultivation kind of let him trickle in, they let Dalinar kind of handle it one step at a time and come to terms with them and grow in the process, right? And it didn't be too much for Odium. So cultivation really came in clutch there. That was awesome. Navani has been given the gem containing the thrill to look over. Navani says that she's seen something like this before, made by Gavilar, which is why I am theorizing that Ba'ato Mishram, is that the name? Is imprisoned in that gem Gavilar head. Alright. Dawnshard says that he's going to learn to read, which is great. Super duper cool. Shallan is down to start actually learning from Yasna, which is also incredible. She's, I'm sure, going to get a lot stronger very fast. Shallan is everyone at once. She is now like piloting her body by committee. You know, she is Shallan, but Veil's and Radiant's thoughts are like in her head, which is all just kind of whack. What is Taravangian's next plan, I wonder, because this clearly didn't work. Coalition seems to be strong because they won the battle. I mean, bada bing, bada boom. I gotta stop saying that. It's like 4 times this video. Alright, so Szeth did go back to Nalan to have a little talk after the battle, but they were just like, alright, yeah, we're cool. We're on different sides. It's no big deal. And, they high-fived. Venli is back with the Barshendi, but she is a Radiant now, right? So that's not going to be true for long. She's going to find a way to escape, I hope. There's a line about how only Ishar survived with his mind intact, but Ishar is the one who is like the crazy like god priest or whatever of that one nation, Tukar, the god king of priest king of Tukar. So I'm not sure that Ishar actually did survive with his mind intact. I don't know if that's accurate. Szeth now has access to the Surge of Division now that he has sworn this third oath. So he had Gravitation, which allows him to fly. Now he has Division, which is the one that Dustbringers have that allow them to destroy things. So Szeth just also got a lot stronger, which is going to be cool. The Love Triangle is doing Love Triangle things. Adolin is like, I've seen the way you look at him and the way he looks at you. I don't want to stand between you. And Shallan is like, dude, shut up. So Shallan is like, no, it's you I love. And Caledon, meanwhile, is up there. Syl's like, well, they're kissing or whatever, but you'll get her next time. And Caledon was like, no, I don't want to do that. Let's just stop the whole love triangle thing. And Shallan is like, separately, yes, to Adolin, let's stop the love triangle thing. And Adolin's like, oh, let's stop the love triangle thing. Okay. And they just stop the love triangle thing. And that's great because I'm getting tired of talking about it. So Adolin is trying to actually address Shallan's issues, like her, mental issues and having all the personalities and stuff. And I'm like, nice. But then Shallan is just very dismissive. And she's like, I'm just 3 people now. It's fine. Like, get over it. And I don't like that. She should really try to talk to someone. Okay, so the humans did bring odium with them. John and I, when we first recorded all this, had thought, like, maybe they brought honor. No. Honor and cultivation were on Roshar. When the humans came, when they were the Voidbringers, they did bring odium with them. Okay, and Rock is sad. And maybe it's his turn to be sad because it seems like everyone in Bridge 4 is kind of taking turns. So Taravangian is back, and at first I'm like, oh my god, is he going to act like he was cool all along, and is Downshard just going to keep trusting him? And it turns out no. Taravangian actually does tell Downshard some of what's going on straight out. He doesn't say anything about the diagram, he doesn't say anything about his trip to the Night Watch or anything like that. But he says that, I did abandon you. Oh no, he also doesn't say that he was the one who sabotaged Downshard, but he says, I did abandon you because I thought you were going to lose this fight, and when you did, abandoning you to put me in the best position to step up and take control of the coalition, right? So he's like being a little bit honest, and he later reveals that he's being just honest enough to kind of keep Downshard's trust. He says that there is a woman in Kharbranth who goes by the name of Doba. They think she is Buta Elin. And I think that's probably true. So there's probably, this Buta Elin person is probably one of the heralds in Kharbranth. Okay. And she had apparently told him there's a desolation approaching in his story, or maybe that really had happened, and that was what drove him to go to the Night Watcher to find a way to defeat this desolation. Okay, so Moesh has been given a weird knife with a gem in it, and, we mentioned a little bit back, he was supposed to kill a god. Well, he is directed to go kill that beggar that Downshard had talked to, who had started spouting the names of various unmade, and he stabs him, and at first the beggar is like, oh, ha, you can't kill me. But then eventually he's like, oh god, oh no. And he starts like saying all this really spooky stuff. Black smoke comes out, the knife withdraws, leaving a blackened wound, and this guy is dead. And I wonder, why wouldn't the Unmade do this themselves? And it says in the book that this was the final death of Yezrian, King of Heralds. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, so that was Yezrian, King of Heralds, that beggar. Whoa, alright, whack. He is apparently permanently dead. He did not go back to, like, the torture hell. He's, like, done, okay? So whatever keeps these heralds resurrecting, this knife stops it, and that is pretty spooky. So, hey, we're down to 9 heralds. Lopen also has a sprint, and Lopen is, like, comforting a man who lost an arm, like, just a soldier. And he kind of accidentally says the second ideal, so now Lopen is also a full-fledged Windrunner, and that was kind of a funny scene. Caledon's going to take off and go somewhere. Ash and Talon are still hanging out. Talon is back to being totally crazy. The other heralds, in this case Ash is the one we're watching, can feel the death of Yezrian's soul. Presumably all of the heralds can feel this, and they are very concerned. Also, Ash sees pictures of themselves, very realistic pictures of all of the heralds, and says, why has Midius been giving away pictures of us? Earlier, Yasna had referred to the person giving the pictures as just an unlikely source. We don't know who Midius is. I'm pretty darn sure this is a name we've never heard before. But something to keep an ear out for, or eye, going into the future. And finally, the last chapter of the book. Okay. Turns out the place Caledon was going when he flew off after that whole thingy that I like just mentioned. He flew off like 15 seconds ago. I don't know. He was going to check on the people they had left behind in Kholinar. In this case, Drehi and Scar and Vatha and the rest of, Shallan's retinue, as well as Elhokar's little baby son, who they had managed to get out of the city, which is just terrific. Which I think means that Adolin is not the king. I think that this little baby is probably next in line for the throne. But also, babies don't make very good kings, so don't know about that. Dalinar does still somewhat trust Taravangian, but not explicitly like he used to. Taravangian, meanwhile, we go to a scene where he opens a window and Odium comes in, and he has a meeting with Odium in this weird setting. I don't know, he gets pulled into a little bit of a vision. It's a bad day for Taravangian, and Odium says, you think I would talk to you on a good day? You think I would talk to you when you might be in a position of power? And Taravangian's like, no, I suppose not. It turns out that Taravangian has been trying to get Odium's attention. He has, in fact, offered him such things as an honor blade and access to Urithiru during the battle. Oh, that was Odium, or that was Taravangian who orchestrated that. So now we know that the Windrunner's blade is now in the hands of the bad guys. Taravangian is like, well, I had this plan. We gotta team up so that you can spare my people at the end of all this when you inevitably win. And Odium is like, oh, you think that your little diagram showed you so much? Well, look at what I can see. And boom, and he shows how much of the future he can see, how much he is aware of, and it's like, Taravangian suddenly realizes, oh my god, I'm like a little toddler compared to this guy, right? However, Renarin is a hole in Odium's vision, just like he was a hole in the diagram. So Renarin possibly going to be very, very significant going forwards, because I guess that Odium cannot plan around him, which is great. Okay. So, Taravangian is like, well, you can't meet with Dalinar again because you can't risk getting pulled into a contest of champions, right? So, agree to my terms and I'll help you going forward, right? And the terms end up being that, specifically the people who live in Kharbranth, people who are born there and people who, married people who were born there, will survive, and every other human in Roshar will die. So that is rough. I don't know how many people they'll be able to cram into Kharbranth. Oh, but it's only people who... They'll have to make polygamy legal, and everyone can just marry people who were born there. That's probably going to be the climax of the book. All right. So Taravangian is totally evil now. Earlier he was kind of good. He was coming at things from another angle, but now he's allied with the bad guys. And he did steal the Honor Blade. Yes, that is true. The only Radiant who wasn't at the battle was Malada. So if they're wondering who opened the Oath Gate, I don't know. Kind of seems like it might have been Malada. Adolin admits to Dalinar that he killed Sadeas, and he says, I'm not going to be king. I'm not cut out for it. Don't make me king. Jeez, dude. And he really puts his foot down about it. And it turns out they make Yasna the king instead, which makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure Yasna's going to do an absolutely terrific job. So Yasna is the new king of the Alethi. Bada ping, bada. And yeah, the Parshendi that Caledon had been hanging out with way back at the beginning of this book, that Moash had later hung out with, who, they were going to make Ladder 4 together. They want to hang out with Moash. They like Moash, so that he's kind of got a new family here, his own little bridge fort away from home. And they are going to give Moash the Honor Blade of the Windrunners to train with, so he is going to be on a playing field with the good guys for a bit longer. What will they have him do next, I wonder? They name him Vyre, he who quiets, or if we were in a superhero universe, he'd be called Moash the Silencer, which is just pretty cool. Shallan and Adolin are getting married. Wow, and this was weird to me, because I could have sworn we had a love triangle just 30 minutes ago. But no, love triangle gone, getting married happening, and it's just going down. Vale says we could do far worse, and Radiant says, but not much better, and it's just kind of Shallan's little internal dialogue is fun, although concerning. And her brothers finally show up, which I had just started wondering about recently. Bada bing, bada, ha-ho, they're there. And they have missed so much, because last time they saw Shallan, last time they even spoke to Shallan, she was like, I'm Yasna's ward, haha, I'm gonna steal it. And, like, they've missed everything that's happened in, like, 2.5 books now, I think. They know, like, nothing. And Reyes is pretty cool. I mean, he stuck to his word. He sent the guys. However, he did tell Shallan that her next task is going to be convincing Ja-Anat to break from Odium and serve the Ghostbloods. Alternatively, capture and deliver Ja-Anat to the Ghostbloods, which does seem difficult. And I guess that is probably going to be a big part of the plot of the next book, I suspect. Also, Dalinar starts writing his book, Oathbringer. Bahahu, it all came around. Epilogue. Hoyt is being a little goofball. He's talking to people, being goofy. He asks somebody a question. He walks far away from them and asks another person the same question, right? And says, "What do you think about that?" And they're like, "What?" And he says, "I asked it earlier. You couldn't hear." And it's like, oh, what? He philosophizes about art more, as he is wont to do. He says that if even one person likes art, it is worthwhile, which I personally agree with. There's a line where he says, he exposed his teeth, but not the one that was missing. But that was impossible. And I'm just like, oh, Brandon Sanderson, what a goof. And, okay, Wit speaks to a wall. He says, I will give you truths. I know some juicy ones. And a spren, a cryptic specifically, like comes out of the wall and crawls up his sleeve or whatever. And he, like, saves it. And, you know, kind of seems like maybe Wit is going to become a Lightweaver himself, because it seems like he's got to get one power from every world in the Cosmere eventually, right? So he's probably going to become a Lightweaver. And my guess is that this cryptic he just saved was specifically the one that Elhokar was about to bind, because Elhokar had seen faces in the mirror back in book 1, right? He had seen Shallan's spren, and when he did, he said, that seems familiar to me somehow. And then he started saying the words, and it seems very likely to me that he was being scouted by the cryptics. And he was about to bind this one. But then he died so tragically, and Wit was here to save it. And Wit said that this was the reason he had been in Kholinar this whole time, which of course he hadn't known up to now, but he suspected that this was it. Okay, and that wraps up Oathbringer. Wow, that took almost 2 hours. I'm sorry about this, that it had to be this way, but you know, we'll certainly make sure this will never happen again. I'm going to do a better job of staying on top of episode uploads, and we'll make sure to do little checks before we start recording any given day to make sure that our audio is working for both of us. So, yeah! Thanks for listening. Next time, read Dawnshard. Yes, which I'm very excited about. Ebook is out to people who back the Kickstarter, and yeah, John and I are going to record for that on Friday in just 4 short days, and it'll be up shortly after. So, thanks for watching / listening. I'm Sam. And I'm John. And this has been Sam and John's Book Club. Bye.